Hello and welcome to our special presentation on suicide prevention. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mayor Dr. Ken Moore, and with me today is our Franklin Police Chief, Deb Faulkner.
This week is Suicide Prevention Week, and today is World Suicide Prevention Day. Our focus for this program is to do several things: help recognize the warning signs, provide guidance on what you can do to help, and with a list of resources, and also to share some powerful stories from survivors and others.
By drawing attention to the problem of suicide, this program strives to reduce the stigma surrounding the topic, as well as encourage the pursuit of mental health assistance and support for people who have attempted suicide.
Williamson County, when compared to other Tennessee counties, has a high suicide rate for juveniles ages 10 to 19. These are our children and our future. I'm sworn to protect them. This is alarming and tragic. Psychological emergencies are a leading call for service for the Franklin Police Department. Police officers are trained observers for anyone who might be experiencing distress. But unfortunately, in these situations, we have absolutely no interaction until the worst has happened.
Suicide crosses all socioeconomic statuses and ethnicities: young, old, men, women, teens, and military personnel. And that is why I've convened a Blue Ribbon panel on mental health. And from that we founded Find Hope Franklin. It is a local resource for anyone who needs help dealing with suicide and how to prevent it from happening to your friends or family. And Franklin and Williamson County are not immune to anxiety, depression, and a growing number of suicide deaths. There are suicide risk factors, like someone feeling like they don't belong or feeling like a burden to their friends, isolation and financial struggles, and access to means.
These are warning signs, and there are many others, but there's also ways that you can help. But before we talk about resources and support, let's listen to the stories of some survivors and others who have experienced the suicide of a loved one.
Suicide is complicated and tragic, but is often preventable. The following are 3 different stories, but all with many similarities. In 2008, Jimmy Beam was going through a contentious divorce. When the economy crashed, he lost his business. Then he turned to drugs to ease his mental anguish.
At that time, I just got to a point where I just gave up, where I just didn't care anymore. Some of the friends that I thought I had weren't there, and some folks that in the church community that I thought would be there weren't there. And so I felt isolated and I felt alone. And because of that, I became very depressed. And I had never dealt with depression. I'd never dealt with anxiety really before. So this was all new to me. I didn't know anything about the red flags or the dangerous things to look for.
Williamson County High School student Cole had been struggling with obsessive compulsive disorder since he was a young boy. His family worked to help him with open communication and therapy, but at some point it wasn't enough.
My OCD was a particular challenge because the vast majority of people don't understand what it's like to lose sleep over existential questions, or to spend all of your free time studying questions about where the universe came from, or studying religion, or constantly worrying about wasting time because life is too short to live. And it's difficult to imagine those extremes. And so I felt very alone because not many people could empathize with that or sympathize with me on that level.
Stephen Hansley lost his son James to suicide in 2018. He said he didn't know his son was suffering mentally.
Good kid. Just a good
Before he was a great young man, he was just a cute, good little boy. Typical upbringing for this county: Oakview Elementary, Page Middle, Page High. James made Eagle Scout as a senior year in high school. And among his peers, I think James, and among his family, he was known as just a quiet, sort of a quiet individual. He never sucked the air out of the room, but people loved him to be there, I think, because he was such a good listener. He was 6'4", a big, tall, good-looking kid. We never had problems with him. He was a great student. He was a freshman at the University of Tennessee, and just a joy to be around.
Jimmy kept on his self-destructive path for 2 years, until one fateful day on January 23, 2010, he said he felt like everything was in slow motion, a blur. Then later that night, he was pulled over by a state trooper.
So I'm sitting there, they run the information, the trooper comes back, can tell by the expression on his face that something's wrong, and he's like, did you know that your license is suspended? And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, apparently you had a speeding ticket a couple years ago in the Nashville area, and it says you never paid it, and so your license was suspended. Well, it was when he said that it was like the straw that broke the camel's back. When the trooper told me to pull over, I took off.
At one point, he stopped and the troopers began firing on his car. He was not shot, but was able to take off again. He left his vehicle and ran into the woods with his handgun.
And I laid there and I'm like, guess this is it. I didn't realize that this is where it was going to come to, that this was how it's going to end, but maybe guess this is it. I don't see how I'm going to get out of this now. So I just laid there and I began hearing, dogs in the woods behind me. So probably search dogs. I heard a helicopter. And then I started to hear the police from where I ran from working their way towards me. I had lost my glasses when I had abandoned my vehicle, so I could see, but it was kind of blurry, and of course, it being dark and all the lights and stuff. But it just hit me. It was just like, well, I guess this is it. I guess this is how it ends. And so while I was laying on my stomach and laying behind the tree, I took my .45, I pointed it at my head, and I pulled the trigger. And when I pulled the trigger, the gun jammed. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. And so I took the gun, I unjammed it, and when I unjammed it, it discharged. And when that happened, of course, everybody got quiet. I could hear everyone kind of was quiet because they were, I guess, trying to detect where that was coming from. So then I was really in a panic. I'm like, oh gosh, they're gonna get me. They're thinking I'm shooting at them. And so I just remember grabbing the gun, and this time more quickly, and I think this is kind of an important point, but more quickly I grabbed the gun, I pointed it here, and there's a scar right here, but I pointed the gun there, and I pulled the trigger, and shot myself. And so the .45 went through here, and it discharged the corner right here by my forehead.
For high school student Cole, his obsessions and compulsions became more extreme. He had difficult times with family and became more isolated. He said he felt an overwhelming feeling of fatigue leading to a path of self-destruction.
And my self-harm began actually a few months before, maybe about 7 or so months before I did attempt to take my life. And it was a very slow and painful process of just slowly fading away. I fear that when it comes to people who do take their own lives, these things don't happen quickly, and there are lots of signs if you just know what to look for. And so now that is something that I'm passionate about, is finding those signs, because I know that I gave off many that many people didn't notice just because they don't know what to look for. So the night that I did attempt to take my life was one of the most profound nights of my life and contained one of the best moments of my life. And it was very strange looking back now and seeing that there was such a bright light.
One of Cole's friends was there that night, and Cole realized just how much he cared when he rode with him to the hospital.
It's one of the most special moments to me looking back now, because I feel like those of us who do struggle often fail to realize that no matter how alone these problems have made us feel, people do care. They care more than your anxiety, your depression, your OCD, or whatever it is wants you to believe.
Hinesley said his son James made an impulsive act the night he jumped from the Natchez Trace Bridge.
That's not the act of a rational mind. And so I think one reason suicide can be stigmatized by society is people don't understand it. I certainly didn't understand it. I mean, I'd known of it with some relatives, and but then it hit us out of the blue. And as I told you, some people had plenty of warnings and we didn't have any warnings. And so what I've come to understand through reading and research is that it's really not the act of a rational mind, and nobody's really to blame.
After Jimmy's attempt, he was told he had a 20% chance of surviving. He ended up okay, but lost his sight. He said he was fortunate and it could have been much worse, but now he still had to deal with his divorce, loss of business, and now legal troubles from fleeing troopers. His family helped him, and he went through years of counseling.
But it was during that time also that I was in the hospital that I realized, it was about the end of the third day, I remember my dad coming in, and I said, "Dad," I said, "I've kind of realized something." He goes, "Well, what's that?" I said, "I have two choices. I can either be a bump on a log and feel sorry for myself the rest of my life," I said, "or I can man up and figure out how to face this head on and get through this."
Jimmy then went on to get probation and work on his skills to become independent. He learned Braille and how to walk with a cane and was able to get a seeing eye dog. He found in group therapy that he enjoyed connecting with others.
I found that in my journey the last couple of years, when I would go to these group sessions or talk to people about my story, I always connected with someone in the room. And those folks would always come up to me afterwards and say, "You know, your story really hit home with me. I'm someone who has attempted suicide a few times, or I've thought about it and decided not to, talk myself out of it. And, you know, you've really given me a different perception on it."
High schooler Cole also learned from his attempted suicide and has gone on to help his peers.
I've worked with my high school to create a mental health awareness group where we gave presentations and we had weekly discussions and just created a safe space for people to sit, be themselves with whatever they're carrying. It's been individual conversations. Sometimes it's not conversations, it's just being present for people when they need you to be.
James's father, Stephen, is also working with others to prevent another person from taking their life. He is in support of the Natchez Trace Bridge Barrier Coalition.
And we know that it's called means access reduction, or some people call it means access restriction or reduction. And we know it works. The Golden Gate has done it. Other notable bridges around the world have done it. It's another means of prevention. You have to look at prevention not just in the early warning signs, but also in that impulsive moment. So things like a barricade on a bridge, things like suicide prevention pamphlets in a gun shop, anything to get them to think twice.
Jimmy went on to graduate from MTSU and Vanderbilt Peabody College and is now working as a therapist at the Refuge Center in Franklin. Cole is starting his college career at Washington and Lee, a distinguished university. And Stephen is working with others who have been involved with the grief of suicide to help them heal. Jimmy, Cole, and Stephen have this advice for those who may be contemplating suicide or for those who want to help someone else.
I think what's important is knowing and understanding what those red flags are. What are those danger signs? You know, if you're isolating yourself, if you're coping by drugs, if, you know, all those different things, those are warning signs. And I didn't know what those warning signs were.
All of your feelings, all of them, are valid, and not all of your thoughts are true. And no matter what silliness you're feeling, no matter how ridiculous or absurd or shameful or unacceptable it seems that your feelings are, you get to feel them because those are a part of you, and you get to embrace the fact that they are there. You get to let them sit with you, and you get to manage them when you are able. And you don't have to believe everything you think. As someone with OCD, that's incredibly difficult to accept. And you are more than what you feel and what you think. But those are parts of you, and once you accept that you feel this way, that you think this way, you can begin to change if that is something that that you need to do in order to heal.
If they see any signs, then I would say you should go overboard. If there's any thing that alarms you, then you should act out on your concerns with your child verbally, and especially with young teenage boys who are the predominance of victims, arguably with the exception of 55 to 65-year-old men. Men don't tend to verbalize their problems as much. We miss some things in retrospect, and at the time it didn't seem out of the ordinary at all. He seemed like a very normal kid starting his freshman year of college. His grades never suffered. His behavior never changed. That James had one impulsive night and an irrational act, and it cost him the rest of his life.
Well, those are some incredibly powerful stories that we have just heard. I'm Amy Alexander, the director of the Refuge Center for Counseling, a Franklin-based nonprofit counseling center offering affordable, cutting-edge emotional wellness services to our community. And joining me today are Cindy Seiler with Mercy Community Healthcare in Franklin, Tom Starling, the president and CEO of Mental Health America of Mid-South, and Sage West with Volunteer Behavioral Healthcare System. So these stories of self-harm and suicide are truly happening too often in our community. And our goal today is to educate our community to see the warning signs of suicide, to know how to help, and how to access the professional support that is needed. So Cindy, you and I work together often. Mercy and Refuge are the largest counseling providers in this county. Can you tell me more about the behavioral health services that Mercy provides and how someone can get support there?
Sure, thank you, Amy. Mercy's behavioral health services take the primary care services that we provide as an FQHC, a federally qualified health center, to a fully integrated model of care, including mental health and behavioral health services for children and for adults. Beyond arranging referrals with needed subspecialists by our care coordination team, Mercy has licensed therapists and counselors who provide individual counseling, group therapy, play therapy, and other services such as EMDR and PCIT to care for the whole person, mind, body, and spirit. Regardless of a family's insurance status, these services are provided through our counseling center. Mercy also provides individual counseling and mental health education through our school-based counseling program that's in 3 school districts. Children are referred to that program through a process in each individual school. All of our services are provided in a comforting, encouraging, faith-based environment, regardless of an individual's ability to pay. We're proud to partner with the Refuge Center in every way possible. And Amy, the Refuge Center actually provides additional trainings in this community, such as mental health first aid training. Would you share more about what that is and why it can be so beneficial to local companies and churches and schools and even families in our community?
Absolutely. Thank you, Cindy. You know, mental health first aid it's a 1-day skills-based training. And essentially it just teaches community members to identify, understand, and respond to mental health and substance abuse issues. The Refuge Center is glad to provide this training to churches, schools, or businesses, and we can do that in person or virtually. So Tom, tell us about the mission of Mental Health America and also about the really neat free assessments that are available to any community member through your website.
Sure. You know, just like friends might call or get support from the American Heart Association or the National Kidney Foundation, Mental Health America is here for you when you have a mental health diagnosis or you just have some mental health concerns. For over 75 years, our Mental Health America affiliate has freely provided information, brochures, education, advocacy, support, trainings, referrals. We listen to you and your concerns, and that way we can better make referrals to the Refuge Counseling Center, Mercy Clinic, Rolling Hills Hospital, the Guidance Center, hotlines, crisis lines, whatever you need. And we can provide resources so you can better share those concerns. Here's a great place to start. Go to our MHA website at mhamidSouth.org and take a free online screening there. We have mental health screenings for depression, bipolar, eating disorders, anxiety, workplace wellness, addictions, and several more. And these are free evidence-based screenings so that we've kind of taken the guesswork out for you. And now you won't be receiving a diagnosis per se, but you can take these evidence-based screenings that are free and anonymous, print them out, and share them with your primary care physician or with your counselor. Even on the back end of these screenings, you'll find helpful protocols, exercises, local resources to help point you in the right direction. So again, feel free to just Google Mental Health America of the Mid-South, or just go to mhamidSouth.org to learn more. Call us, learn how to share your screening results with friends, and remember, there really is no health without mental health.
Thank you, Tom. We're so grateful for the many, many resources that you offer to this community. You guys truly make this a better place. Finally, Sage, would you please tell us about the National Suicide Prevention Hotline and also the Adult Crisis Hotline?
Absolutely. Thank you, Amy. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is a 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, free and confidential hotline that is available nationwide in all 50 states. Many of you may have heard it. The number is 1-800-273-TALK. So 1-800-273-TALK, T-A-L-K. And in Tennessee, it is, there are contracts with Volunteer Behavioral Health as one of the contracts to man this line. So it's actually staffed with trained counselors who are also part of our mobile crisis call center. So these folks are day-to-day basis there to help people who are in distress or experiencing some type of emotional behavioral health crisis. And not only for individuals who may be experiencing that, but also for concerned family members and friends who need to know what to do if they're concerned about someone, one of their loved ones or friends, coworker. They can provide a lot of direction, support, guidance and education to those folks too. So, we're really hoping that the message is that there is help and there is always hope, and there is somebody there to reach out to at any time.
Well, that's a critical message, and our community is so rich with resources. No one should have to struggle or suffer alone. There is help out there. So I want to emphasize that the contact information for the Refuge Center for Counseling, Mercy Community Healthcare, Mental Health America, and Volunteer Behavioral Healthcare Systems, among many other resources, can all be found on the website www.findhopefranklin.com.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak about this important topic. It is a tough subject to discuss, but we have to talk about it. It could make the difference in life or death of someone that we love. We appreciate the amazing speakers who stepped up to share their stories, and for our dedicated mental health experts who participated in this program. There is hope and help available. No one should have to suffer alone.
And if something touched you in this program and you need help or know someone who does, please go to www.findhopefranklin.com. This is a local resource created by the finest team of mental health providers in Franklin. Once there, you can get immediate help. There are also resources for other types of support, and you can learn about mental health resources right here in Franklin, and also hospitals that can help as well.
You can also find information regarding substance abuse issues on the Find Hope Franklin website. If you'd like to learn about QPR, Question, Persuade, Respond training, there are opportunities in Franklin. Just visit this website. The training is free.
And be sure to tune in on the September 14th Frank Talks here on our Facebook page or on Franklin Tomorrow's Facebook page. They will focus on suicide awareness, education, and prevention. We'll leave you with more contacts for help. Thank you for joining us, and please share this program. Together, let's reduce the stigma of mental health.